All right, we'll call this meeting to order. It's 10:31, Monday, October 21st, 2024. We're here for a discussion of the county pay matrix. And I think you asked to put this on the agenda.
Yeah.
Do you want to start us?
Yes. Oh, I'd just like to let everybody know about our payroll clerk. Our payroll clerk has 150 employees. She does our health insurance, dental insurance, PERSI, FICA, FUTA, SUTA, pays out twice a month. She does the sick leave, Department of Labor, workman comp claims. She does all of our ICREMP assets. She does the quarterly IRS reports, W-2s, 1099s, time cards. One of the biggest problems we have is we have one clerk, and we have 4 different pay matrices, and that is almost impossible for one person to do. So what we want to do is we need to simplify our pay matrix into one. If we had another pay clerk, that would be great, but we don't have the money to go out and get another pay clerk. So I've also brought this meeting so that Peggy can come forward and talk about the step and grade system that they've updated. It was my understanding it was just updated with the with inflation and not with anything else.
No, we didn't change any classifications within the system itself. There were a lot of employees that classifications were not up to date. There were several items. The wages started so low, the A, B, and C. They started out on the beginners, plus the grade, so low we just omitted them because they were like $7.28. You're not going to find people for that price. But as far as classification of employees, all we did was incorporate several systems into the same step and grade system that the other people were in. We didn't change any classifications whatsoever.
Now, was the roads department part of this, or was the sheriff's department part of this?
No.
They're their own. They're still their own.
They're still, and so is solid waste.
And solid waste. They're still their own.
But you have some buts there because the sheriff's office clerical people are still in the step and grade system. Mm-hmm. You still have in our on the current system, they still have people still sitting on this system. Yet they have their deputies and other people on different systems, same as the road.
Okay. So road, solid waste, and the sheriff's department are still on their own as of now. And I think we're, looking at a pay study to we're going to try to bring that all underneath one. Is that what we're looking at, Commissioner Dose?
Well, we were looking at a pay study. One of the things it might recommend was going to one pay scale. Mm-hmm. We were looking at that outside influence to give us a screenshot as to how fair we are. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that fell through when the company quit delivering that service, so we started over. I believe Commissioner Cassidy, you started over on that, right?
Well, I've turned it over to Commissioner Zimmerman.
Yep.
And gave him all the information.
So I've asked Peggy
so that we can go from there.
And I've just asked Peggy to go out and contact her clerks to see who they recommend. It'd be easier to go out and see what other counties did, kind of like you did with the
yeah.
So that we're not getting outside people that we don't know.
Yeah, that's what I had done. I consulted with another county, a couple counties, but unfortunately.
Okay. All right, so now one of the reasons why we're here is payroll is coming up on the 24th, right? Mm-hmm. And we need to be under some kind of a pay scale within
right.
the
So I
other
mean,
departments.
everybody that had their different, so you had the treasurer's office, the assessors, the appraisers, everybody had, they're all still step and grade. You know, it's all still grade. Longevity was all the same. So this just incorporated and put, you know, everybody into one box instead of 7 different boxes.
Did they have their
But-
own? Did they have their own before that? I thought we were.
So
on
it
one.
was always, in the past, it was always one system. But then
Mm-hmm.
after I left, it got into all sorts of different systems, which,
But, and,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go
I,
ahead.
I can't see, but, so when you guys updated this, you used, where did you get the information to update the new matrix you've got?
the old system. And we just,
So I use the same
Did it with-
percentages as the old step and grade, only I just had to make it where it matched where everybody was already at, pretty much. Not necessarily match where everybody's at. I can't. So, you know, nobody was below this mark as a starting wage on the step and grade.
the A and the B
So
and C
that's
column,
what I
Tracy.
used on the ABC, right? And I went from there and just used the same percentages and moved it over and down,
So everybody had the same stuff.
so that everybody's in the same.
You know, but what
Same
my
box.
question was like the prosecutor's office, the clerk's office, the assessor's office, and the treasurer's office. They were all under the same pay scale at one time, and I don't understand.
Well, then they were all under this, and I'm going to say it was old because that's what we had used prior, always the old system. Well, then after I left, it seemed like everyone went out and did a step and grade their own and did their own wages, which didn't match anything or compared to what the other classification of other offices were. Because a deputy's a deputy no matter what you're doing. This is how that system worked. The older system, they were classified as beginners, intermediate, and grade. Now, when they did this study years ago, they went through every office and basically said that classifications of deputies were pretty much close to being the same in the clerical department. They had an increase regarding deputies from the sheriff's office, but this system took care of all that when that study was done. And that's the system that was used prior. Before, then everyone making their own step and grade going different years. So what we did is just brought it back together and made one system, put it back into the old system basically. We didn't change any classification. This was done years ago, so we didn't do that. We just followed basically this system here and put everyone back to where they were. Of course, we did bring back, we brought some of the wages up because that's how you do it during the budgeting process. We've always done it during the budgeting process. And then it's approved and it just goes on from there. But there's nothing's changed basically in this system other than incorporating them all together in the same wage that they should be. I mean, Ben left his girls in. They were in the old step and grade system. The sheriff's office left their clerical people in the old step and grade system, so you got them in different areas where they're all same.
Is that what the problem is? Is maybe they were classified in differently, or I don't understand why.
Why they did? I wasn't here. I don't know why they did it.
You know, is this step and grade system the same as yours that you had?
This sheet here is the current old. I guess don't want to confuse terminology,
Yeah.
but use the same terminology.
Yeah.
It's the current old step and grade system that consists of approximately 16 steps. So it's got step 1 through 16, as the clerk referenced, some of those very early steps, 1, 2, 3, are extremely low in pay, and to our knowledge, none of the county employees even fall into those categories. But it does consist of 16 steps.
Okay.
It's my understanding this is the new proposed step and grade system.
No, it's not new.
Okay, well, this one consists of...
It brings the wages up through the budgeting process. So it's not a new system, Ben.
Okay, so it consists of 11 steps. So it's not the same as the 16 step.
So if I
one that
just
was
added
the old-
1 through 4, then, or 1 through 5, going backwards from where I started, then it would be the same, right?
I don't believe so, but I think that that's part of this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And your question specifically, Commissioner Zimmerman, was how different departments came off of the old pay matrix and developed their own pay matrices. My office was not one of those. So the prosecuting attorney's office stayed on the original old matrix. It's my understanding, having been here through those years where a number of new matrices were developed, that different elected officials and department heads identified that the current matrices didn't properly account for how they believed their employees should be categorized and or move up through a step and grade matrix. And so they had developed their own. They had proposed them to the BOCC, and the BOCC had adopted that matrix for that particular office. It's my understanding of how the various matrices that are currently in existence in the county came to be. And I don't know that we have any elected officials here besides the clerk's office that moved on to a new matrix, because isn't your office still on the original one, or am I wrong on that, Jerry?
We just used the old one, much like pay. Updated for the current. The only thing we had different was we addressed anything over 24 years for 30 and 35, which needs to be done.
So I apologize. I guess I misspoke, because that would mean that you guys are technically on a different matrix than the original old one.
Our new matrix followed the old one because the old one took into account shift work, holiday work, those type of things. So all of that stuff was, which, and I have to add, it was a good system. I mean, they spent a lot of money on that. It was well done. And being a double assessor, I could not better that. I mean, that's not my wheelhouse. So I followed what the experts came up with originally and just kind of brought it, updated it.
So what other offices? It would just be the treasurer's office, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Prosecutor, when the board voted to raise the pay in the budget of the folks over here on this side, did your office do some calculating, and did it come out the same on the matrix that you were accustomed to versus on this new one?
I did do that calculation in my office, and I came up with different numbers than the court came up with, which is part of the concern that I have, or the concern that I raise. And I think the primary issue from my office's standpoint, and this speaks to the categorization of employees, is that if we're taking departments that have employees that are on different pay matrices and we're consolidating it down to one, I think that there can be a lot of benefits to a consolidation that Commissioner Zimmerman has already raised on the record. And I think that considering the amount of work that goes into administering multiple matrices, the more matrices you have to administer, the more work that goes into it. The number of matrices that are necessary or prudent is ultimately a decision of the BOCC, whether or not you guys want to have 6 matrices like Kootenai County has, or whether or not you want to have one single matrix. That's the BOCC's decision, and I think certainly taking into account the amount of work that your payroll clerk goes through in order to administer those is absolutely a consideration the BOCC can make. When you look at the current system that's in place in Shoshone County, where you have multiple matrices, and you have employees throughout the county that are scattered within those matrices, and you attempt to consolidate them back down into one matrix, somebody is having to make the decision to take an employee from matrix 1 and put it into matrix X, and take another employee over here from matrix 2 and put it into matrix X. And that process requires them to evaluate which step and grade that employee is going to fall under the matrix that's going to be implemented. And I think that process is what I have a great deal of concern with, because I want that process to be done correctly. I want there to be a correct analysis of where employees should be placed, and I want that analysis to be done both backed by data. I want it to be educated, and I want it to be informed, meaning I want the BOCC to have at its disposal information and input from those players that are necessary and pertinent to evaluate what goes into that various task or duty. The opinion that a deputy is a deputy regardless of where they work within the county is not a philosophy that I subscribe to, candidly. I think that there are various roles throughout the county government, and some of those roles are similar, and they should be treated similarly. I think some of those roles are different, and where they are different, arguably they should be treated differently. Ultimately, that decision, though, is the BOCC's decision. I certainly can provide my own input, and I can tell the BOCC, these are the positions within my office, this is the type of work they do, this is the education that's required, and this is where I think they should fall within a pay matrix. The BOCC then is who's actually tasked with looking at that and saying, we think this employee from this department is similar to this employee from this department, and for this type of work, they should fall under grade X. That process is one that I don't think we can skip past. And if the BOCC is going to adopt a new pay matrix, I certainly hope that they're keeping in mind the value of input for determining where employees should fall within that matrix. When I evaluated the numbers, to your question, Commissioner Dose, for my office, I'll just use the last employee on my list, so I'll call them employee Y. Employee Y within my office under the current pay matrix fell under grade 11C. The current pay for grade 11C would be $20.65 an hour for that employee. Pursuant to the commissioner's adoption of the new budget for FY25, and within it, the adoption of a step bump for each of the employees, that employee would then bump to 12C, and their pay would be $21.73 under our current pay matrix. With the adoption of the new pay matrix that has been proposed by the clerk, that employee has been categorized into category L9G6. And under L9G6, their pay would be $21.27. So for that particular employee, they would be recategorized they would be placed into a new category that would actually result in a lower wage than they would have received under the current pay matrix. The categorization of that employee into L9G6 would have been done without the solicitation of my input and without an analysis of where that employee falls in relation to other employees that are either like or unlike that employee in job duties, tasks, and required education and or experience for the job. And I don't know if that sufficiently answered your question, Commissioner Dose, as to the numbers I ran, but that was what I had come up with when I analyzed employees and that particular employee as an example.
What's the classification of that employee as it stands today? It was this 11C?
11C.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my concern is I'm not understanding if in fact, historically, I think what the board did is we said we would base those pay bumps on the current pay scale, but when I hear an example like that, it sounds like we're not doing that.
If you cut off the top part, what I did, so this would be on here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is where Ben says she is right here, as a 6, which is where she is here, as a 6, 21, 27, right?
Correct?
So I kept them in the same grade longevity spot. It's just that this was a little bit higher than the old wages.
Except in this example, it's actually a pay cut for this person.
Not a pay cut.
A cut in her increase.
If we were just increasing on the on this step and grade and taking her to a higher grade, so to speak, where instead of an 11, she'd be a 12. So if you were looking at this one, instead of a 6, she'd be a 7 kind of thing. So I literally just kept her as an 11, only it says 6 here because
of you cutting off the top.
Because I cut off the top. Yeah. And then left her in the same, and then yeah, it was just in the same spot. So I didn't move her, I guess is where I'm going with that. So Ben saying
she was in the same
Ben
spot,
saying he would have, he thought that instead of going, like this, where it was, just a increase there, he was increasing him a grade level.
Which is what I thought we had voted to do.
What do you mean increase a grade level?
We had talked in our budget about bumping, giving everybody a step. I'm not sure I'm using the proper language now.
It wasn't. I don't think it was a step. I think
it was an
just
inflation
increase
from the inflation
to match everybody else, to help out with what
bridge the gap a
little bit. It wasn't a.
Well, how much increase was it then if it wasn't a step? That was just my understanding. I think I had the same understanding that the prosecutor did. But how much increase did we give? Percentage wise, or?
So I think it was 1% from here to there to bridge the gap. So that these, because I stayed with the same, percentages down and across.
So you didn't move anybody up and down.
So I didn't move anybody up and down in grade.
You just increased the grade amount.
The wage amount.
Yeah, you increased the grade amount basically.
Right.
By 1%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was a grade 11,
because that's what
you would
we
have
talked
increased
about.
it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
To bridge the gap, kind of thing. So yeah, I think that was 1%.
Well, that explains part of my question. I believed that we had voted to move them up a step, or what the prosecutor just outlined. And I don't recall discussing a 1% increase. I don't remember ever talking about a percentage.
Right. It was just a conversation about bringing them closer to the ones that had gotten
Right.
raises
Yeah.
over
Raises.
the year. So
And it
that's,
comes out,
and
and
then
they just,
having
you
them
guys
all
just
in
have,
here.
Well, how did you get to the 1%?
well, you guys,
Going from the lowest grade that I could, and then still using the same formula to again make it where it evened up with people, not evened up completely, but made those so that it was so everybody stayed in the same place without being outrageous, crazy numbers.
And if we do this 1%, how much of the increase that we allowed in the budget does that use? I mean, we had set aside, we increased the budget to cover
148,000.
148,000. We're increasing the budget by 148.
That was in the current expense. That was what my figure seems to remember, so that everyone would come together.
And there was people that didn't get longevity that should have got longevity. There was
A lot of
other
errors
issues.
in that system that people didn't get it through the years that we.
Mhm.
I don't know if it was not ever told to the people in the past that every elected official is supposed to be watching this. It isn't just us doing it. Yes, we do catch them, but some of them we didn't catch as well. So should be, 4 eyes on everything, like I said. But we just basically try to take the old system and put everyone back into it. So number one, that payroll clerk is not going from one thing to another. It's too hard. And then brought these people up, as far as Ben, I mean, we're going to have probably, I think the study will say that, but when I say classification deputy, my deputies do the same amount of work that yours do, basically, in the court system. So we basically have the same deputies, and that was what was in all the other systems. Now, we could probably have some agreements to disagreements on that, but we didn't change that perception from the original study. I didn't change that perception. That perception would have to come from your study on wages, and at that time, but we left the girls basically the same because of the fact we based it on this old system. Now, when your wage study comes through, and you may have a different of classifications brought to the board, that's something that you guys will have to make your decision on. But we didn't make that decision. And if that's what you're thinking, I didn't make that decision. That decision was made years ago on this old study. That they were all basically pretty much, their work areas were about the same classification. If they took something in concept of it a little bit different, could have been. But, I mean, my attorney that's underneath me versus your attorney, they're way apart. And I've got an attorney underneath me that's had more than 30 years. His wages versus Ben's people coming right out of college is way apart.
$1,000 difference a year.
Well, I'm just saying, that's why this study needs to be done. I agree, the study needs to be done. But as far as trying to say that I changed the system, I did not. I think, I say to the commissioners, we need to go ahead and get this to these employees that haven't had anything on our side for quite a while with the same classification until you get your study done. That's where I'm at. These employees deserve that.
Mhm.
I don't know how, if it ever was brought to legal, I don't know, because I wasn't here, that all these systems came about. I don't know what the advice, who advice it was, or how it came about, because I wasn't here.
I'm at a loss. I was under the impression, more like what the prosecutors explained, that we definitely voted not to change systems until we did a study.
Mhm.
The example he gave, that I thought we were giving everybody a step versus the percent, the 1%. I do want to get them something. I don't want to hang that up, but I hear what the clerk is saying. I understand that, I think, but it does sound like this is the 1% is different than what I thought we were doing for the employees.
And what I understood that we were doing with the employees is try to catch them up from what happened with the other pay scales, and whatever that was, I didn't think we were doing it in this. It'd have to be a percentage or whatever else. I mean, it's not going to be an exact percentage because we had people that had longevity that weren't paid their longevity that deserved it, and so I'm sure they got paid a little more because they had to be caught up. So, I mean, this was a catch up basically, and it was a catch up for this side because of the loss that they had because they never got the wage increases when all the other departments did. That was my understanding. I wasn't sure. I don't understand the step up. I didn't.
We didn't give anyone a step up.
No, the
We
step
kept them all together.
was increased. From what I see now, the step was increased, not the adjusted up one grade. Just the step was the funds from the step was increased.
Right.
So they're still in the same grade, same step. That step was just increased.
Right.
Question is did we form a new matrix? I mean, we've heard various arguments. Did we form a new matrix? Because we voted not to. And I hear what you're saying. I think I understand it. About the time I start to understand it, then I hear something else and I get a little confused.
Well, I just don't feel that we took the old system. I'm not understanding why everyone thinks it's a new system.
Do we have any comments from the elected? Further comments from Jerry? Or?
Well, my only comment is, so we're not in this predicament 10 months from now, get that wage study.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I've been harping that for 10 years now. And it just, if we don't, it's going to get worse. And that can's just going to get more beat up as we kick it down the road.
I agree.
If we continue the way we are, there's a lot of animosity between the employees. And they don't deserve that. And we need to remove that. So,
Good point.
And that's when we're going to change the step and grade. Actually change it and redo it is upon the advice of hopefully our
Right.
Third-party wage study.
Right. But this just fills the
This is
gap
just-
in.
and that third party's unbiased.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry, my employees are better and we behave than all of yours. They're the best. So,
And that's good to have that, really.
Oh,
all of
absolutely.
us, are very, very fortunate to have the employees we do.
Mr. Prosecutor, any other thoughts?
I mean, I think that really just clearing up the confusion that you've outlined previously. At that last budget hearing, I walked away from it with specific notes that I had taken during that meeting regarding what I believe the BOCC's motion to be based upon the budget that was presented by the clerk. And it was my understanding that it was a step bump for all of the employees that had been left out of previous increases. Utilizing that information, I went back to the current pay matrix that my employees were on. We analyzed it, we took them all, we gave them a bump up one step, and we utilized that for our baseline of what we anticipated their pay would be moving forward. When we received the new proposed pay matrix, obviously there was a great deal of confusion on my end because it didn't match what the expectation was from what I thought the BOCC's motion was. I understood the BOCC's intent to move forward and analyze the number of matrices that are in place and where employees are going to fall into those matrices after a wage study is conducted. But it was my understanding that no actual new matrix had been approved. And so my understanding was based upon the BOCC's motion. That's what I was utilizing for my analysis of the new wages for the employees that would be within my office. I do continue to share the same concerns that I think everyone in the room has voiced with needing to update the system. To Jerry's earlier point, he noted that when he adopted a new matrix for his office, it was based on the old one, but he made some changes, one of which was to increase the grade level for longevity beyond 24 years. My office doesn't have that change made to it. The new matrix that's being proposed doesn't have that change made to it, and I've got an employee in my office that is topped out and is over that benchmark. So to Jerry's point, that's one good example of something in the pay matrix that, if and when it comes time for the BOCC to adopt a new one on behalf of my employees, considering I do have an employee that's topped out, I do think it'd be beneficial if we could incorporate a change like Jerry has made to his matrix. And so these are some of the conversations that I think are pertinent to have before we move forward, and I hope that we can get some clarity to it.
Commissioner Cassidy, do you have any thoughts?
I'm still kind of at a loss as far as I don't want anyone to go backwards, of course. But I do think that all of the electeds need to agree on if they feel that's adequate for their staff.
Okay. Well, it does represent, on the good side, a small increase for the staff over here. So we are starting to catch them up, and it fits within the budget.
Yeah.
Would the idea the prosecutor brought up, that I brought up, that I thought we were increasing everybody by a step, would that not fit in the budget?
So that's going to have to be reworked for sure, because he's suggesting, moving that grade up, which is, like he said, it's going to be a higher increase than this increase. So we'd have to look at everybody's all over again, each one to see what happens with, because that'll definitely take that part.
At the time of budgeting, we were pressing current expense as it was. So that's why it was left the way it was, but yet brought the grade up.
It's hard to say.
Brought the wage up, not the grade.
The wage.
And what the wage
terminology.
Wage within the grade.
Yeah.
Right.
And we need to do something today because payroll's waiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're really not adopting it. This
old system
would
was
it be
adopted.
A new pay grade, or would it?
No, it's always the old system. And when we increased that old system, when we did like COLAs and stuff, it was through the budgeting process. Basically, that's the way it was done years ago. So I didn't change the system itself, and we already adopted the wage portion of it through the budgeting process.
Commissioners, can I just ask a clarifying question which might help you all in your analysis of this? seeing how we have different matrices now that are in use, and I don't want to call out any specific department. I just want to recognize that we do have departments that are on different matrices. If we have an employee that on matrix number 1 is in category 11C, and we have employee on matrix 2 in a different department that's in category 11C, and their wages are different in category 11C because they're on different pay matrices. If they now are moved onto the same pay matrix, theoretically it will bring their pay to the same amount. If we do that, have we analyzed whether or not the pay being different where it's at under the different matrices right now is intentionally that way or not? And if we move them onto the same and now make them the same wage, is that the intended consequence for those employees? And I'm asking that question just for philosophical discussion and analyzing the effect of moving to a new matrix.
That brings up a question for Timmy. Have you analyzed this to the point that we know nobody's getting a pay cut?
Nobody's getting a pay cut. No.
No.
Okay.
No, there's definitely no
Everybody
pay
is
cuts.
getting an increase.
Everybody, there is an increase for, on the side.
Is some people getting more than 1%?
I would think that some would be getting more
Because of
because of where they
longevities and
landed
things
in
got
there and the
missed, yes.
longevity.
Because of
and
longevity.
stuff, so.
Well, because of some of the classifications even
right.
that got missed, literally got missed. And to me, that goes way back since I left, and it's a shame to some of these employees.
Okay, commissioners, what do you want to do? Do you want to continue this for a few hours and think about it, or do you want to take action?
Let's continue it, because we're at 15 minutes and then we'll discuss it. I'd like to do that.
So continue it until this afternoon?
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever time you think.
Okay.
Does that work for you, Commissioner?
It does, yes.
Okay, I don't want to rush, but we're over time.
Yeah, we've got 11.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue this meeting till 12:30.
Okay.
Does that work? Do I need a motion for that? Do motion?
I'll motion to continue the meeting till 12:30.
Second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we'll think about this and come back together at 12:30. All right. With that, and then we'll have time for public comment if anybody wants to come back for that. All right, thank you. With that, are we adjourned?
You'd be in recess on
We're in
this.
recess.